Welcome to Klick Into Purpose, where we talk about conversations that actually move people and organizations forward. I'm Nicco LoCascio, and alongside my co-host, Lara Klick, we explore what it really takes to lead well in today's world. This podcast is for leaders, professionals, and anyone who wants to communicate more clearly, build trust, and lead with intention, not just with authority. Each episode will break down real life scenarios, share practical strategies, and give you tools you can actually use whether you're leading a team, an organization, or just navigating tough conversations in your own life. Today we're joined by our guest, Toni Land. Toni is a nurse, healthcare executive, and founder of Landing Exceptional Experiences. With more than 30 years working inside complex health systems, she partners with leaders and frontline teams to turn strategy into consistent daily behavior. She's also the creator of the Experience Accelerator Lab and author of the conversation, Why Good Ideas Don't Survive the Day. Welcome to the show, Toni.
Thank you. Thank
So,
you.
whether we're talking about leadership, career growth, entrepreneurship, or creating impact, this is where purpose meets real conversation. So, without further delay, let's click into it. So, Toni, tell us a little bit about you and how you got started in your career.
Okay, how I got started in my career. I guess that's a long story since it's a long career, but I guess I would start off first by saying I'm a wife, a mother, and a grandmother. I've got five grandchildren, so lots of fun at our house. And I'm also a nurse and, now a business owner. I've actually been a nurse for over 30 years. I got my start in pediatrics and oncology, and then, like many in the healthcare profession, I moved into some adult nursing home care, many different places and spaces before getting into process improvement and patient experience. But even when I think back, I didn't realize I was such a helper in my younger days. And so actually spent a year and a half at Appalachian State in information systems. And then came home one summer and I was like, I don't think I want to do that for the rest of my life. And so went on this, I guess, soul searching is kind of what we would call it. But I spent a little over a year working two jobs. I drove a school bus and I worked at McDonald's prior to having an aha moment and applying to nursing school. I was a diploma grad before going back to school. So applying to nursing school and getting accepted. And, here I am over 30 years later.
That's fascinating. That's a question we probably should start asking. What's the most original job you've ever had?
It
I
might
have to
be.
think about what mine would be. It might have been when I worked at the costume shop when I was in college. That was a lot of fun. I got to dress up in costume every day and act like a fool. Um, but Toni, when did you make that decision to transition from working within health systems, which, as you know, you and I have similar career paths, about the same length of time, where we kind of grew with the patient experience field, to take the leap and create your own business and move into entrepreneurship? What spurred that decision?
Yeah, Laura, I it was never my goal. Some people have always known they wanted to be an entrepreneur, own their own business. That was never really, my goal. It was never really on the radar for me. And I'd been working in many health systems, and during the height of the pandemic, I was out in rural West Texas and served in that space, which was, an awesome opportunity to learn to serve a different community. And then I moved into, I guess you would say, a little out of health systems into software. And I was head of healthcare at a SaaS company and really started to see the work through a different lens and how I could possibly impact on a bigger scale, impact more than just the system I'm with, but really impact across the country and even across the world. And so that kind of led me to say, what's really important to me? What's work that I really enjoy doing? And could I do that, on a regular basis to impact patients, families, team members, communities? and took a leap of faith and said, you know what, I'm gonna step out and go for it. I learned a lot in our roles in the health system, but being in a SaaS company also helped me learn a lot about sales because I worked alongside the sales team. And those guys took me under their wing and showed me a lot about sales and the sales cycle and all the art and science around that body of work. And so that really set me up and helped me as I moved into the entrepreneurship.
Yeah, that's great because I know that you and I talked offline. Sales is the place I'm so used to wanting to
Yep.
give my advice away for free. And my CFO,
Yes.
AKA husband, keeps yelling at me, would you stop doing that?
We're
We're
givers,
givers.
right?
We're
That's what we
natural.
do.
And all three of us on this call really are natural helpers. You mentioned it
Mhm.
earlier. It's in our souls to
Yes,
help others. It's just a different way of helping now.
exactly,
So,
exactly.
so Tony, you mentioned sales. So I know something me and Laura have talked about. We love helping
Mhm.
organizations, but the part where we struggle at is sales. So what would your recommendation be to entrepreneurs who may be struggling with that aspect of the business?
Yeah, so I echo both of you guys. That part never feels comfortable to me. And so I've really had to step back and say, the work I'm bringing really can impact patients, families, team members, the organization also. But when we think about the outcomes, I mean, that's why we do the
Mhm.
work to help others, and I can impact the outcomes for others, and being comfortable and confident in that. Now, I will not say that I'm a hardcore sales, that's not really my style, but I feel like if I can lean into relationships and if I can provide value for you and for your team, then we're fit. And I may not be your fit, and and that's okay too. So I would say just be confident in the value that you're bringing others, um, and be willing to lean into that. Yeah.
What has been the most rewarding thing about owning your own business?
Okay. I would say probably the first thing that comes to mind for me is I love the freedom to be creative. I absolutely love, if you follow me on LinkedIn, I'm forever doing some kind of video, whether it's Dr. Seuss or last week it was The Devil Wears Prada because me and the children were getting ready to go see that over the weekend. But the freedom to just, if I'm reading something or if I'm watching something on TV and I hear something and I hear a little phrase and being able to kind of say, I think that, that kind of resonates with me and how could I apply it and being able to be creative around that. That is probably the first most rewarding thing for me, personally, and from hearing from others, the videos resonate with them. They're, concepts they can lean into. And I think the second is when I actually get to activate the work in an organization and partner with them because I see the team members, their body language, shoulders go down, their faces light up as they get to participate, in the co-design. I hear laughter, and life is hard and work is hard. We all need a little laughter, and so hearing them laugh and have some fun around the work, yeah, that is super rewarding for me.
All right, so I agree. I think that leaning into that and seeing people discover that they've learned something new is such a wonderful thing to do. And it also resonated with me when you talked about being able to broaden the scope of your influence within the industry. I know that I've been talking about I'm in my giving back era, little Taylor Swift reference because I've got a 23-year-old daughter. So, but beyond that giving back and the freedom to be creative, and I agree, being able to kind of do your thing and impart this knowledge, I know that there are challenges associated with this work. So what has been the most challenging aspect of being that entrepreneur and working on your own and being your own boss? So what have you found the most challenging or a barrier you've overcome in that area?
Ooh, okay, that's a loaded question. So, so I think there's several. We know that healthcare is busy. There's competing priorities. I don't care what space you work in healthcare. There's always the competing priorities, and still, even after all these years, there's still the challenge for many organizations to elevate patient experience as a core foundational way of how we serve others and how we deliver care. And so I still I'm still having those intentional conversations, or leaders are asking me, how do we get our leadership to engage? How do we get our leaders, to elevate the work? And that still continues to be, one of the challenging conversations. So I think if I were naming one, that would be one: the competing priorities and really elevating experience. And you know what? I'll back up and I won't even say elevating experience, because I like to think of it, and this is what I tell folks when I'm talking to them: incorporating experience, because it's not a standalone. It ought to be incorporated into, the quality, the safety, the outcomes, the finance, the reputation management. And so, let's not silo our work, but how do we collaborate, partner with others in the work in order to achieve success?
And that connection between wanting to do the right thing and engaging in the right work is a challenge that I think all of us really experience. And coming into it as the expert with the PowerPoint and the briefcase from out of town, you still have that challenge. So
Yeah, you do, Laura. And, I still have organizations, and maybe you guys have experienced the same, where leaders are challenged to tie the financial
Mhm.
impact, whether direct or downstream, to the work. And when you're talking to the C-suite and a CFO with a tight budget, then they start seeing our work as maybe this is the work that can be incorporated into another department, because they feel like it's easy work to get, or soft work to get done. And so I think leaders being able to have that type of conversation and articulate the true value of the
yeah,
work
I
is
agree with you. And I think that that's something that especially people in nonprofits in areas like healthcare, you have almost two buckets. You have the caregivers and then the financial business side of things. And I think that a big part of our work on this call is helping our partners to bridge that gap. Because if you can't identify an ROI, you're not going to have the funding. And I know I've done a lot of work and research on really looking at where are those ROIs, because, and Nicco, bear with us a minute, we're going to go deep
No,
into
you're
the
fine.
patient experience world. So the pay for performance, which is what kind of started our field, is that the federal government regulated our work and began to connect reimbursement to healthcare to the work. That's actually when you, especially if you have a large health system, it's such a drop in the bucket. It's not that much money. But if you lose one clinic manager or one nurse manager, that's a $200,000 hit to an organization. And Nicco, I would imagine the same is true, one manager within your space,
Mhm.
because, and that's where the true cost lies. And getting that bridge, I think, is a challenge for entrepreneurs, is figuring out where is that cost avoidance or revenue growth that you can lean into to then counteract with your cost. And going all the way back to our earlier conversation about the sales part, that's helped me, is I may cost X number of dollars, but I'm going to potentially save you Y number of dollars. So I'm actually helping you that way too.
Yes, I would agree. I think, looking at that, your turnover, retention, some of that data, and even leaning into some of the quality and safety measures as we talk about things like falls. And we know that there's data out there that show us the cost of a fall, not only the trust that is built and or broken if we or our loved ones, fall while in our care, and being able to even connect dollars around something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah, and in my field, the struggle is with the nonprofits that I'm working with. A lot of them get federal funding. So going back to the return on investment. So if we're doing consultant work, they want to make sure that they're going to get a return on their investment. And so going back to that turnover and retention piece, in our field, usually it's like $5,000 to $10,000 when you lose someone and then recruiting. And so if we're coming in with our services, having them to see the value, if you bring them in, this is going to be a return on their investment.
Yeah, and Nicco, I think that you and I have talked offline as well about also quantifying things like giving the leaders the skills and
Yep.
how that's going to help the efficiency of the whole organization.
Yep.
Yeah.
So Tony, what is your specialization in the space of your field?
Yeah, so if I were going to say what my specialization is, it is all around
Hmm.
execution. So, I will even take it out of my professional world, in my personal world. My family picks at me, all the time because I'm always like, just get her done already, just get her done. So for me, it is all about, that execution. I think as I've been in organizations, I see a lot of times where, we have plenty of data, we've got a great strategy, but that gap from what I like to call knowing to doing. Many times the teams know what to do, but to actually be able to do it every day with every patient, every encounter, every family member, oftentimes, that's the gap. And to me, that execution piece is the game changer for everyone.
Yeah, I agree 100%. You know that I like to say we know what to do. We know why it's important. The question is, how do you get it done and sustain
Yeah.
that work? And so tell me your philosophy around that and that how to bridge that knowing doing gap. What is it that you find success with your clients in terms of creating that connection?
Yeah, so before I can talk about the model, the model for the lab, which is how I deliver that work. But if I were thinking about my philosophy, oftentimes when I'm talking leaders, they want their scores to improve yesterday, right? They want a 30-point jump in 2 weeks. They want this huge, huge change. And oftentimes I will say to them, experience ain't a crash diet. And so, that's really my kind of my philosophy with them. If you want consistent year over year improvement, that it's not going to be this short burst, effort, that it's going to be, I'm in it for the lifestyle change, if you will. I haven't been a, Weight Watchers lifetime member. I don't know about you guys, but I've, done weight things and diets seems like forever. But one of the things is, yes, you're a Weight Watchers. You're gonna see that quick, drop in weight, but they're really there for the lifestyle change, and that's what we're looking for in the organization. Not the check the box, but truly that that lifestyle change. And so, how do we get them to slow down, stay the course, in order to truly start this to start being their operating, the way they operate, the way they serve, the way they care for others. So I often say, and I would kind of think my philosophy is, experience ain't a crash diet. We're in it for the lifestyle change.
When we're talking about change, we actually had our last podcast was on change management. So what do you think is the best approach when having effective change? Do you think it's a top-down approach, or how would you address that?
So I like a co-design approach, and that is the foundation of the work that I actually do. We are very intentional in having the organization slow down enough to allow the people who actually do the work every day to have a voice in the development of the work, not after it's already been, said and done, but to truly have a voice in in the development of the work. And I think even from a change management perspective, it totally changes the level of engagement from the team. It changes the way I, as a leader, am leading the work because I'm no longer pushing now. I'm really, leaning in around removing barriers. So I think frontline team members having a say so from the beginning in that change, I think is so important to the change management process.
100% agree. And a lot of the times it's lack of communication where it fails.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, Cotter would say we haven't, communicated that sense of urgency, right, in order to really start accelerating that change.
Exactly. What is something innovative that you've done which has shown results?
Yeah, so I think for me, it would be using my model in order, the model that we use, the Experience Accelerator Lab. We use the four-part model, and it's all around align, co-design, activate, and sustain is where we really lean in around those four areas, and we take them through a 12-week lab. And it is intentionally called a lab. So, not a course, not a workshop. I mean, if you think back to your chemistry days, one of my least favorite subjects ever, but if you think back to those days, you had your lab where you actually did the work. And so, one of the first things we do in the lab is we actually have them bring their data because we want to make data informed decisions. Have them bring their data, and then we look at that data to say who are the best partners with you. Now, that's if you're in the individual cohort. If you're in an organizational cohort, then you may be all the managers from certain departments or across the organization. But you actually go back to that unit or clinic and have a conversation. So, Nicco, if you were the leader of that clinic, I would have a conversation with you to say, hey, I'm part of an accelerator lab and I need a partner in order to, co-design my lab work, and you would agree to that. And we would talk about what that looks like. Then all the work over those 12 weeks is done in your clinic, as your lab source. So it truly is not a check the box body of work. It is really we're doing the work in real time, week after week. And so it's been fun to see the teams actually not only co-design, they brainstorm around that, not only co-design the behavior that we're going to put in place, and we do some fun work around activating that with fun scoreboards. And their teams some leaders I've had say, really, you think we can put up something like that? And I'm like, let them have fun. Everything from pink Cadillacs, as the team was working on Courtesy and Respect, because it was Aretha, RESPECT, to somebody else using Justin Bieber, I'm sorry, because they were, their team decided on that. But the fun they have with that keeps them engaged in the work. So designing this model and being able to have organizations, whether you're in a clinic-based or hospital-based, activate that in the organization. Yes, the team engagement piece, and also seeing the improvement in their patient experience measures has been definitely invigorating for me. It's been exciting.
I love that you've incorporated fun. You know me, I love fun, and everything has to be kind of a little bit lighthearted, because if we're not lighthearted, then we just get bogged down in the bureaucracy side of it. So I think that fun is something we need to reintroduce in a lot of workspaces. So I
Yes.
absolutely love that. Speaking of fun, I've read your book. I thought it was fantastic. Tell our audience, our listeners, about your book and how they can get it and what excited you about that.
Yeah, so it was exciting. It is exciting. I won't say was, it is still exciting because sometimes it seems a little surreal. But the book is called The Conversation: Why Good Ideas Don't Survive the Day, and it is available on Amazon. You can find it there if you search the title or just search my name. The book will show up in paperback and in Kindle format. But I really tried to say I'm not looking to teach people the how. I'm looking to spark the curiosity that'll lead to the right conversations. And that was really kind of my mindset going into it. And what have I seen? What have I heard from leaders as I've engaged across numerous, healthcare organizations? And what have I heard from team members that they don't always say to their leaders? And how can I bring that into a book form that hopefully, folks can take and use in their own organizations and spark maybe some conversations that haven't, been happening. Everything from the conversation to the team already knew. And so, if the team already knew, then why didn't they tell me? Why didn't we have that conversation? And so being able to spark some of those conversations. So I've enjoyed writing it, and more importantly, I've enjoyed hearing others talk about, one, feeling seen and heard many times as experienced leaders, like, okay, somebody's captured what we've been seeing and hearing out here, but also like leaders leaning in to say, really? Is that what people are saying? And having some conversation around
Yeah,
that.
and I love that because it emphasizes communication, which we talk about so much on here, and how vital that is, and creating that open avenue of dialogue to meet those common goals. So for those of you who are listening, we'll also put a link to Toni's book in the description of this podcast to make sure you can get to Toni, because it really is, it's all about humans taking care of humans and how do we have those human conversations.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, Tony, what do you see coming next that excites you?
Whew, okay. Okay, so I know AI is all the buzz
Mhm.
out there. I mean, like, can you read anything that's not AI? I don't care what industry you work in, right? Just reading one about school and education and students recently, because I have two children that are educators. And AI, I love AI. I use AI, on a regular basis. It definitely has helped me to be more efficient. So I'm a huge technology fan. We have technology, yeah, let's use it to our benefit. At the same time, I think as AI continues to grow, then it puts this spotlight back on human connections, human relationships, and human communication, and really elevates even more the need for the humanist part of us that AI and technology can't replicate. And I think we've seen, from my perspective, we've seen this growing gap. And I would say, even back to as our children have text started, when they started texting more, then we saw less face to face and verbal communication. And I think AI is only taking that to kind of a next level, so to speak. So I think that excites me that we're going to be shifting more and focusing more on human relationships, human connection, even having a face to face, even if that's a virtual. I met a girl on LinkedIn the other day, and we, kind of gone back and forth on some of the messages, and I inboxed her, and I was like, "Hey, you want to have a virtual coffee? We can kind of meet face to face." And so, no agenda,
Yeah.
just a chat and get to know you over, a virtual cup of coffee. So I'm excited about the humanist part, that I feel like is coming back into focus.
Yeah, it's interesting. My husband and I actually argue about it all the time because my husband, who is my CFO, likes machines much more than human beings. We're such an interesting couple. And both my kids too, by the way. I'm the only person in this household that actually likes people. But my husband and I often argue about healthcare and how, because he's of the belief that AI is going to take over everything. And then I say, no, you'll never take the human out of humanity. We may be able to have a robot push beds down the hallway. We may be able to have a robot bring the medications into the room. But in our professions, it always requires that human, having that human touch, and being able to read the nonverbals and see the fear behind the eyes and hear the unstated conversation that people have. And I think that I love your point that AI is wonderful to augment. I use it like crazy.
Yes,
But the message is always my own.
absolutely.
And is
Absolutely.
AI, I'm not super familiar with the healthcare industry, is it already being heavily used or is it something that's being more introduced?
So I think it's a combination of the two. There are some places I think AI has absolutely a place. Let me use an example. I think you both know I'm in that sandwich generation. So my father, who turns 86 in a couple of weeks, has been having some health issues. And as I sat and tried to coordinate multiple specialists that he needs to see because he has some complex health issues, I sat there and said, oh my God, what a place for AI. If there was a service I could sign up for and say, this is my dad's symptoms, and this is what my father needs help with, and they could help me find the right person. I think places like Access, AI is coming. I think that AI is sitting at the bedside of every patient, whether we admit it or not, because the family members have their virtual assistants going. So healthcare has to embrace that. There are also some elements of AI that is saving lives. For example, in radiology right now, we know that AI readings of your x-rays are actually more accurate than human eyes.
Wow.
But it's a place where that humanity is still necessary, because while AI can have that first look and can see things, I know when I got a bad result from some diagnostic radiology I received, I certainly did not want a machine to tell me that. I needed to have a conversation with a human being.
Nope.
And I think that that's where we have a gap right now, because my first conversation was with a machine, because I got the results well before the human got to me. So I think that healthcare has a real challenge surrounding AI in that way. Tony, what are your thoughts of healthcare and
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up that example. I was talking to a friend just last week who talked about an experience where she's gone in for mammography, and her normal course of action is that she will often have to, they will come back abnormal, and she will have to, have some additional testing. And she was talking to the radiologist, and he said, "Come on back. I want to show you what we're doing." And and AI, how they were using AI to look at numerous of her, cuts of her mammography in order to really get a deep dive look at, yes, AI giving an interpretation, but he as the
right?
expert leaning into that and really doing that final check and having the conversation that assured her, and gave her that comfort. I think we're also seeing AI in a lot of our healthcare call centers, and seeing AI agents used there. In the health plan world, we're definitely seeing AI agents making calls to patients and family members based on certain disease processes and preventive care. We're seeing it there. Ambient listening, which has been around for a little bit longer for physicians. I'm hopeful, and maybe this is probably a little bit of the nurse bias in me, but I'm hopeful that one day nurses
Yeah.
chart a lot. And so, especially in an inpatient setting, and I'm looking for the day where there's some type of ambient listening as nurses and techs are going in and out of rooms, that's capturing those conversations so that then those nurses and techs can focus on that, the caring part, versus the documentation. So haven't seen that piece yet, but I'm
So it
hopeful.
actually was being piloted in my last organization right as I was leaving to begin to do all
That
that
gives
flow
me hope.
charting.
That's
But
awesome.
but again, Nico, to your point, if you notice the theme, the intent is to get the caregiver back to giving care,
Yeah.
because
Yes.
the field has become so heavily regulated and complex that we have caregivers spending, I think that the current ratio is 1 hour of charting for every 1 hour of FaceTime. So, when you see a physician or you see a nurse, just recognize that every minute you're spending with them, they're spending an equal number of minutes behind the scenes. And in emergency medicine, I think it's a 2-to-1 ratio, 2 hours of charting to every 1 hour of FaceTime. So the more that it can get rid of that, the more we can get back to caring for people.
Hmm.
Yeah. And I think, Laura, kind of to your point as you bring that up, us, if we aren't intentional about that time, it will like fall into the ether somewhere. And so, yes, one, documenting how much time are we getting back and what do you do
Right.
with that time? Back when it's been years ago, I did some TCAP work, transforming care at the bedside. It was a collab with Robert Woods Johnson and the IHI, but we were literally doing time studies on the unit, what our nurses doing, and where's some waste that we could eliminate in order to get that time back, so that now I have time to maybe sit with your family at the bedside and learn about what's important to you. What are your goals? So I think we'll have to be really intentional about, yes, we're freeing up time, but what do we do with
For
that
sure.
time?
Nico, where do you see AI in your world?
Um, well, I see. So they've used some call centers and some workforce development agencies, which I think they're trying to get away from that because it's going back to the human side. Is when they call, they want to talk to someone, say, what are the resources? How can we get there? But I feel, and I think this is with any organization, not just in my field, if we're not utilizing AI, then we're going to be left behind. And so we're going to have to utilize it if we want successful, if we want to get data to show our results as well. So I know I use it every day, Laura. I know you use it. I've it helped to run my business, to build documents, and so I think it can help with a lot of like reporting, to get the data they can get to those funders to continue their program to keep going.
Well, and I think that you bring up a really good point. As an entrepreneur, how has AI helped each of us? Because I think we've each said we've used it. I've found something new and exciting. So I'm an academic at heart. I've worked in academic medicine. for my entire career. So if I'm going to write an article, I'm going to have a talk, I'm going to give a keynote, I'm going to have data behind me. I actually
Yeah.
just spoke at an event last week, and people kind of chuckled because I said, I've got my notes here because I needed to have the authors of the study. I wanted to cite them correctly. I mean, I was such an academic. And I was in the room with people that were out of community settings. And, but you always can tell that academic because they always have the data and the citations. But in my world, I save so much time by sitting there and saying, find me peer-reviewed academic studies on, insert here. And then I go between two AIs and I cut it out of one and I paste it in another one. I say, validate this.
Hmm.
And the second one, it's like it gets offended that I asked the first one first because then they tear it apart. And then I cut it out of that one and I put it in the first one and I say, validate this. And so I let the two AIs have a fight. And then when they finish fighting, I pull it out and I actually put it into a third program where I can push a button and I say, give me a video summary of this. And then because of the way I learn and my learning patterns, I'm a visual learner, it actually then creates a literal video and goes through all the research and gives me the summary.
Yeah.
And from there, I can go back in and I can then take a look and read into the studies that I think is most powerful. So as an entrepreneur, that's my new favorite AI. Toni and Nicco, what's your new favorite AI used to help an entrepreneur out?
I I think for me, I think Claude has been the best. I was big with ChatGPT. They do have a new feature for image creation that's pretty amazing that I think will compete or may even be better than Gemini now. It's pretty incredible. So if you all haven't used the new feature with ChatGPT, it's incredible. But Claude has been a game changer. I redid my whole website using Claude Code. I created documents that looked professionals for SOPs for a client. I mean, it's just been pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nico, I'm probably like you. So I am a ChatGPT user, and you're right. The new feature that just came out, what, last
Yeah.
week, I think, the new image feature is, it is really good. But I have used it when I got ready to revamp my website. Definitely, used ChatGPT because I can pull all my documents, that I have across, that I've saved in all my folders. I can pull all those documents in order to help formulate it on my website. And I hook Canva in there. Also, I use Canva and have it connected so that I can create the website. So I use it for that. When I'm writing
Yeah.
proposals, I can dump kind of the conversations that I've had with people, what's important to them, how in the purity of my lab, staying true to my core values of execution, and writing that in a way that will resonate, with potential customers or current customers. So yeah, even I will say even dumping data in there, outcomes data from, different organizations to, be able to articulate that improvement for them. So so many uses. So yes, I'm definitely an advocate.
100%. And I think that if you're an entrepreneur, I think that getting really good at using the technology can save you so much time.
Yep.
And the time that we spend should be out there talking to people, building
Yes.
relationships, making sure that we are in the creative space, writing articles. My undergraduate degree is in secondary English education, which always surprises people. But I had forgotten how much I love to write. So getting out there and writing, and I know my husband will tell me giving my information away, but that's okay because you're creating relationships.
Yes, and the right people do find us as we
Yeah.
give that information away. I'm on a call with the girl the other day, and she's like, "I'll pay you for your time," and I'm like, "Really? You don't need to pay me for my time." We build each other up as growing leaders, and I'm a big believer in planting seeds. When we plant those seeds, then we helping others to grow, and
Yeah.
we will grow as a result.
So that's
Yeah.
actually a great point. I'm going to deviate a little bit here. And Nika, the question is to you as well. What do you guys see as kind of a in-kind resource that you give away versus as an entrepreneur? When do you make that decision that it begins to move to kind of a paid tier? I know for me, I've kind of said that basic consultation calls where we're just talking about developing your problem statement is something that I'll always consider to be kind of a part of our development together. But at what point does it cross the line into coaching is honestly something I've had to learn the hard way. I've had some folks that have not taken advantage, but perhaps pushed that original conversation a bit further than it should have been. So what is it that you see as the line that you draw on giving away your intellectual property and your time versus when do you hit the line that it moves to a pay tier? So what are your thoughts, Nicco? Where do you draw that line?
Yeah, so for me, I will usually give away maybe a framework. So, for example, I presented at a workforce development conference on succession planning and leadership development, and I have a framework. And so I gave that framework away for free. They could go to my website, download all the materials. But a lot of what needs to be done, where I would come in, is they need a lot of it implemented. They need coaching and mentoring set up. They need to identify talent. They need to do stay interviews or whatever it may be. So that's when they would bring me in to help implement the processes in the framework. So they have the good information. They have how I would like to come in and work on it, but I don't give away too much. And so I kind of leave it, where there's room for me to come in and to provide some work as a consultant.
Yeah, and I'm probably similar to that, Nicco. I do, have team leaders that I will be in conversation with, and we're on calls together. And when it leans into more detailed conversation around operationalizing the work, because the model is out there, and my website talks about the model and what that is, and I don't have a problem sending people, kind of the one page on this is the work, this is what we do, this is how it's operationalized, here are results, which they can find online. But when it starts going into the details around the work, and especially if they're bringing into the conversations, maybe we've had several, conversation relationship conversations, and when you're bringing in the details around data and specifics around your unit and or team members, then I think we're ready to elevate to a different conversation.
I think that this is something that every entrepreneur kind of has to do when you do your rate list and you're figuring out what it is that you're going to have within your toolkit that people can purchase. I think that for entrepreneurs, taking that time to kind of figure out when does that line get crossed into paying
Right.
client, recognizing the importance of the relationship building.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, agreed.
So Toni, I have one final question, and that final question is, what did we not ask you today that you think is really important for our listeners to know about you or the services you provide?
Oh, wow. Okay. So I'm going to actually bring up a topic that I often get asked from other leaders, and it's a vendor question. It's all about, and Laura, you probably get some similar questions. What vendor do we use? Who do we choose? What are all the things that we need or don't need? And I feel like there's lots of conversation with leaders, and sometimes they're really unsure of which, vendor that they should be, looking for. So my typical answer to them is, first of all, you need to know what you're trying to accomplish, and don't get sidetracked by all the sexy bells and whistles. You need to know really what you need in order to do business and get the data that you need to do your work. Maybe it's an unpopular opinion, but oftentimes my opinion is that we're spending so much money on our vendor that we don't have money to do the actual work in the organization. And so that's a conversation that I feel like I often have, and I hope that vendors, and if you're listening to the podcast, I hope you vendors out there will also be looking at how are you moving past insights to action. We have heard that term ad nauseum, so it could be sunsetted for me, because we often aren't seeing the action. And so I would love to see vendors truly look at, and this is a little my bias around execution, but how are you really helping people to get work done, truly achieve results, and not just receive, your your data and meet your data needs. So
Yeah,
that's
I
what
love that because ultimately our customers don't want our scores to get better. They want us to get better.
Yep.
absolutely well
So,
said.
well, Toni, this has been absolutely wonderful. We really appreciate you joining us and Click Into Purpose. And for those of you who are listening, I hope that you'll share this with your friends. Toni's information on how to contact her and her information on her book will be in the description of this podcast. Please take the time to like and subscribe if this has added value to your day. Give us the 5 stars, whatever it is that you can do to help us drive this forward, because together we're creating real solutions to real issues for people who are out there as entrepreneurs or giving professions. And we hope that you've enjoyed Click Into Purpose today. Thank you so very much.